Now that's a title screen. Yo, what's going on everyone? My name is Sigsang, and in this review video, I'm going to talk about why Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is my favorite video game of all time. For starters, let's begin with some background info. Sonic Adventure 2 was originally released on the Sega Dreamcast on June 19, 2001, and a few days later was released worldwide on June 23rd. However, earlier that year, Sega announced a discontinuation of the Dreamcast due to poor sales and increased competition from its console rivals, specifically Sony with the PS2. Going forward, Sega would shift their focus to mainly being a publisher in the video game space. Because of this, Sonic Adventure 2 was soon re-released with more content on the Nintendo GameCube as Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. This is the version I grew up with, and crazy enough, was the first video game I ever played. It released in Japan on December 20th, 2001, and in North America on February 12th, 2002. The version I've been playing and recorded this video with is the PC port on Steam, where you can also get the GameCube Battle portion as DLC, which is why I generally refer to this version of the game as Sonic Adventure 2 Battle rather than just Sonic Adventure 2. The PC port came out in 2012, about a month after the PS3 and 360 ports, and is essentially a high-definition release of the game. It looks and plays great, but to get it to boot on modern PCs, just be aware you may need to make some changes to your computer settings or download some mods. Now that we've gone over some background info, let's talk gameplay. Before starting the story, you are given two options. You can start with the Hero Campaign or the Dark Campaign. We'll be going over the Hero Campaign first. The Hero story includes what may be the most iconic Sonic level, besides Green Hill Zone. It's called City Escape. After the opening cutscene where Sonic jumps out of a freaking helicopter, the game cuts to you playing as Sonic snowboarding down the streets of San Francisco at blistering speeds.
Now this is pod racing.
This portion of the stage alone is so iconic, I can't even count how many times I've replayed it. Well, the game does that for you, but I mean throughout my entire life. Eventually, Sonic abandons the piece of metal he's been snowboarding on, and the standard gameplay begins. As Sonic, you'll be doing a lot of platforming and running. Although Sonic is known mainly for his speed, you'll encounter a lot of situations in this game where you'll have to stop to confront enemies, solve puzzles, and overall just slow down the pace. This isn't a bad thing, however, as most of these sections are enjoyable and are usually followed by running sections shortly after. You aren't limited to only Sonic and the Hero story though. You also have access to Tails and Knuckles. Through the Hero story, you'll encounter a variety of different types of stages, and the game will switch you between the three characters. Each character gets about the same number of stages, 5 each for Tails and Knuckles, and 6 for Sonic, for a grand total of 16 hero stages. However, their playstyles are completely different. As Tails, you pilot a mech suit that's the transformation of one of his planes, specifically the Tornado 2. Tails is definitely the slowest paced character out of the three, and his movement can feel a bit clunky. The upside to his gameplay is that you can shoot and lock onto multiple things at once to rack up combos and earn extra points. This is a good opportunity to mention that after each stage, you are given a rank to rate how well you performed, A being the highest rank and E being the lowest. These ranks are based off of how high a score you got throughout the stage. It takes into account how many rings you collected, how fast you cleared the stage, and a few other things. Tails' gameplay gets better as you collect item upgrades, which is a feature included for all playable story characters in the game. Personally, my favorite Tails upgrade is his booster, an item that allows him to hover for a brief amount of time. This makes maneuverability so much more bearable and is an essential upgrade in the game to progress. Item upgrades are permanent for each character, but not all are required to complete the story. Some item upgrades will require you to backtrack through stages, as they may not have been accessible from your first playthrough. Luckily, the game allows you to replay stages through its stage select menu. For instance, Sonic has a secret upgrade in City Escape which is called Magic Gloves. This upgrade allows you to shrink enemies into a tiny ball and chuck them whenever you want. Now, let's talk about the third playable character in the Hero story, Knuckles. Knuckles to me has the least linear playstyle as his stages focus on quote-unquote treasure hunting. In the story, the premise is that the Master Emerald has broken into multiple pieces, again, and Knuckles wants to find all the pieces to restore it, again. FYI, the reason I say again is because something very similar happens in Sonic Adventure 1. Essentially, all Knuckles stages revolve around trying to find the pieces of the Master Emerald, and how you do this is almost completely random. Throughout each of his stages, you will have a sensor that beeps to let you know if you are near a piece of the Master Emerald. The pieces can be in plain sight, hidden in breakable boxes, in walls or the ground, heck, or sometimes even in enemies themselves. Knuckles relies heavily on his abilities to dig and glide to make traversing these stages possible. Now you can understand why I mentioned he has the least linear playstyle of the three hero characters. Besides from the standard stages, you also encounter boss battles throughout the story. The majority of these boss battles are pretty easy, but can be tedious if you haven't caught on to their battle patterns. I unfortunately have a bad habit of just button mashing Tails boss battles, but I can tell you with confidence that this cheese method works. I guess we can now talk about the Dark Story characters and how their gameplay differs from the hero characters. Well, guess what? The Dark Story gameplay is essentially a mirror to how the Hero Story gameplay is, besides them having different stages. There's 3 playable characters: Shadow, Rouge, and Eggman. Shadow is a speed and platforming character like Sonic. Eggman is a mech and shooter character like Tails, and Rouge focuses on treasure hunting like Knuckles. This can sound a bit boring and redundant since they're pretty much just carbon copies of the hero characters, but I ask that you reserve judgment on these characters for now. Let's talk about the story, and hopefully you'll see how these characters truly differentiate themselves from one another. And I'll say right now, the story is one of my favorites in the series, so buckle up for a lot of summarizing. At the beginning of this video, I made the decision to start with the Hero Story gameplay. Similarly, I'll be going over the Hero Story first. There was a reason Sonic had to bust out of a helicopter midair. He had been taken into custody because he was suspected of crimes he did not commit. I'm not sure why he thought it'd be okay to escape, but hey, who am I to judge? Towards the end of the stage City Escape, Sonic is pursued by a laughably large semi-truck with GUN branded across it. GUN, or Gun, is the in-universe military/law enforcement that apparently thinks the semi-trucks is an effective way to catch a hedgehog that's as fast as the speed of sound. Anyways, after the stage ends, Sonic has to go through a boss battle that leads him to encountering Shadow for the first time. Shadow is the actual hedgehog that has committed crimes, and Sonic is being accused in his place. Unfortunately, Shadow is too fast for Sonic, and he ends up in the custody of Gun, again. I mentioned it briefly before, but Knuckles' story in this game revolves around the Master Emerald shattering. This happens because he gets into a scuffle with Rouge and Eggman, and all the roughhousing leads to the Master Emerald breaking into like a million pieces. Knuckles knows he can fix it since it's happened before, so he gets started on his journey. The last character introduced in the Hero Story is Tails, who is looking for Prison Island, a military prison that he believes is where Sonic is being held. Upon arrival, he bumps into Amy, who almost gets wrecked by Eggman. Side note, Amy is a non-playable character in the story, but appears in many cutscenes. Luckily, Tails saves her butt and they begin to infiltrate the prison. It goes without saying, but please don't try this at home. So, that's the basis of the Hero Story. Pretty easy to follow, right? Eventually, Sonic is freed by his amigos from prison, and they begin to investigate who Shadow is and what Eggman is up to this time. Let's talk a bit about the Dark Story now. When you start this campaign, you are greeted with a cutscene of Eggman infiltrating a military base. Eggman is here because he wants to learn about a top secret weapon his late grandfather had worked on. After playing through the opening stage as Eggman, he finds a secret weapon that has been locked away for 50 years. It's none other than the ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow wants to make a deal with Eggman. If he provides him with the Chaos Emeralds, Shadow will grant Eggman a wish. Eggman is curious as to what could be in it for him, so he decides to begin collecting the Chaos Emeralds. Once collected, Shadow tells Eggman to meet him on the space colony Ark. The Ark was a research facility in outer space that was once used by Eggman's grandfather, Gerald Robotnik, and it's also where Shadow was created. The main story of this game revolves around the space facility, its history, and capabilities. Besides from his mission of gathering all 7 Chaos Emeralds and bringing them to the Ark, Shadow's only recollections of his past revolve around his friend Maria, the terminally ill grandchild of Gerald, who was the inspiration for his research. Maria spent time with Shadow on the Ark, but it is implied that she did not escape with Shadow when the Ark was shut down by Gun. Expanded lore in the series explains that she was executed by the military organization. Shadow's anger with the world and humans stems from Maria's death. He wants to avenge her death by bringing destruction to Earth and its inhabitants. By collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, it will activate the Ark's true capabilities. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Chaos Emeralds, they are gems with immense power that have multiple forms of utility. Shadow also has the ability to harness the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and he's able to use Chaos Control, a skill that allows him to manipulate time and space, and why he appears faster than Sonic earlier in the story. Moving on to our last Dark Story character, Rouge the Bat, she's actually a government secret agent that has been tasked with following Eggman and Shadow to discover what they are plotting. While being a secret agent, she's also a treasure hunter, hence her fascination with the pieces of the Master Emerald. She quickly discovers that the two are planning something involving the space colony Ark, which she mentions as having been shut down over 50 years ago. The 3 Dark Story characters eventually gather at the same time on the Ark. Shadow explains to Eggman what the Chaos Emeralds are needed for. They are needed to power the Eclipse Cannon, a weapon of mass destruction created by Gerald Robotnik that is attached to the Ark and has the ability to destroy planets. Basically, a Death Star. With this power, Shadow explains that Eggman can rule the world. Rouge somehow manages to insert herself into this partnership by mentioning that she knows where some of the Chaos Emeralds are. Thus, the trio agree to work together, and their story takes off. As you can imagine, eventually the two stories intertwine. The heroes catch on to Eggman and Shadow's plan and make it their goal to make sure they don't succeed. They travel through a military base, the forest, Eggman's secret base in what looks like Egypt, and eventually end up in space on the Ark. Before the heroes arrive in the Ark, the Dark Story characters decide to test the Eclipse cannon on the moon, and end up destroying half of it in the process. After this event, Eggman gives Earth 24 hours to give in and assimilate to his Eggman Empire. Otherwise, Earth will see the Eclipse cannon fire once again. By this point, Eggman and Shadow are only missing one more Chaos Emerald to achieve max power for the Eclipse cannon. Tails has the final Chaos Emerald, but unfortunately, the heroes fall right into their trap. Tails assigns Sonic to place a fake Chaos Emerald in the Ark's control room to offset the other emeralds. But while Sonic is doing that, Tails and Amy get caught by Eggman, and Sonic attempts to save them. In a shocking turn of events, Eggman traps Sonic in a space pod and launches him straight into the Earth's atmosphere, where the pod Sonic was launched in blows up, implying that Sonic was killed. Tails and Amy are understandably upset, so Tails decides to kick Eggman's ass. Sonic survives the sequence by using Chaos Control with the fake Chaos Emerald, which teleports him back onto the Ark. How he does this never really gets explained, but he is able to get back in time to stop the cannon from firing, and the Earth is safe. This is how the hero story ends, but the dark story unfolds in a different way. Instead of the hero stopping the cannon from firing, Eggman acquires the final Chaos Emerald and preps the Eclipse cannon. But before the credits roll, a warning sign appears on a control panel screen. So what happens? Which of the two is the definitive ending for Sonic Adventure 2 Battle? Well, how these two campaigns end aren't the true endings. Once you clear both campaigns, a new story pops up named Last. When you begin this path, Eggman is frustrated that the cannon does not fire, even with all 7 Chaos Emeralds in place. In the meantime, Sonic and Knuckles regroup with Amy and Tails, and Rouge makes an appearance as well. Instead of the cannon firing, the Ark has now become a giant meteor that has set itself on a collision course with Earth. The Ark was programmed to do this when all 7 Chaos Emeralds were collected. This is made apparent by a video recording left by Gerald Robotnik. Eggman's grandfather made it Shadow's mission to collect all the Chaos Emeralds for this very moment. Gerald was so distraught by Maria's death that he lost all faith in humanity and wanted revenge on the entire world. At the end of the video recording, you can hear someone say "ready," implying they are getting ready to execute Gerald by firing squad. Freaking crazy. Eggman has a revelation during the scene and decides that he does not agree with what his grandfather planned and wants to stop the Ark from crashing down onto Earth. The rest of the characters decide to team up for this final sequence, and the last stage begins, Cannon's Core. Cannon's Core is a montage stage of all playable characters helping to stop the Ark. You begin as Tails, but once this part is complete, the game immediately switches you to Eggman. Time and points scored carry over, and it continues with Rouge, Knuckles, and then Sonic to finish it off. And I personally think this sequence is a really epic way to tie together the end of the game. You may have already recognized, but this stage does leave someone out, Shadow. Shadow decides not to help because he doesn't think there's a chance to save anyone, but Amy lectures him on why he should help the others. During this conversation, he remembers Maria's last words to him.
Shadow, I beg of you, please, do it for me. For
Maria!
a better future. For all people who live on that planet. Give them a chance to be happy. Let them live for their dreams. Shadow, I know you can do it. That's the reason why you were brought into this world. Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog.
I promised her.
Once he remembers Maria's dying wish, he rushes to go help the others. When Sonic and Knuckles arrive at the core, they are stopped by the Bio-Lizard, a creature that was also created by Gerald and was the prototype of the ultimate life form. Shadow shows up and tells Sonic and Knuckles that he will take care of it. After the battle is completed, Sonic and Knuckles take the Master Emerald to the core to stop the Chaos Emeralds for good. However, it doesn't seem to have an effect. What does end up happening is that the Bio-Lizard decides to fuse with the Ark itself to continue the collision course towards Earth. I know this sounds insanely unbelievable, but remember, Sonic can use Chaos Control with the fake emeralds, so we don't worry about it. In order to stop the Ark, Sonic and Shadow decide to take it to a whole new level by using the power of the Chaos Emeralds. And for the first time in the series, 2 hedgehogs go super to save the world. Super Sonic and Super Shadow. Like damn, just look at their aura. The final boss is named the Final Hazard, which is the arc fused with the Bio Lizard. Sonic and Shadow have to defeat this thing in space, which is an epic finale. As you attack the Final Hazard, you switch between Sonic and Shadow each time it takes damage. Once you get its health bar to 0, the battle ends and another cutscene begins. Sonic and Shadow use Chaos Control on the arc to teleport it away from the Earth. Unfortunately, Shadow uses the last bit of his strength for this and ends up falling towards Earth as his energy depletes. The world is saved, but the team loses Shadow as a result. As the credits begin to roll, the team reflects on losing Shadow. It's a very melancholic and somber sequence where all the characters talk with one another about what's transpired throughout the game. Personally, I think this scene is a great way to cap off the game because it allows the player to reflect alongside the characters. And it shows that even though this is a game about talking anthropomorphic animals, it can have a serious tone and story that I believe ultimately works. This is the true ending of the game, and now that we've covered the main gameplay and story, I want to talk about what made this playthrough different than others I've done in the past. Although I've played this game throughout my life more times than I can count, something I'd never done before was get all 180 emblems. Emblems are awards you generally get from beating stages in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, but also can come from other sources, like beating the story, doing additional missions, and even completing minigames. Beating the additional missions in this game isn't exactly that difficult, but to get 180 emblems, you need to essentially 100% the game and get A ranks in all stages and missions. So with this year being 25 years since the original game released, and me now being 30 years old, I decided it was finally time to tackle this goal of mine. I'll start off by saying this was not easy, and took me about 2 months to do all the content. Obviously I took breaks here and there, but know that this will take the average person many in-game hours. What does help is that most of the additional missions for the stages are the same for every character. For each stage, there are 5 missions, which includes the original mission you played through in the story. Mission 2 is to collect 100 rings, which can be pretty annoying since it requires you to take no damage, unless you get lucky with a shield. Mission 3 is to find a lost Chao, which almost always requires the Mystic Melody upgrade, the only upgrade in the game that all the characters can get. Mission 4 includes varying time limits, and Mission 5 is dubbed as Hard Mode. Again, in a vacuum, completing all these missions isn't that difficult. It just takes time, but to get rank A on everything? Boy, let me tell y'all, you need a lot of patience to do this, but it's also what made this journey the most fulfilling. I could tell as I replayed missions, I was getting inherently better at the game, and although there were times where I felt like some missions were too difficult, I kept persevering and was able to make it happen. Also, shout out to everyone online who made guides or videos on how to get A ranks. Y'all are really the GOATs, and I couldn't have done it without you. Seriously. And if you're curious as to which stages I struggle with the most, Skyrail's first mission and Final Rush were especially taxing. And I don't really know if it was just my experience, but they definitely made a lot of Sonic's A ranks really difficult to achieve. So, would I recommend getting all 180 emblems in this game? I think it's a fun challenge, but not something I look forward to doing again anytime soon. And if you're wondering how the game rewards you for achieving this milestone, you unlock a secret stage of Green Hill Zone, which in retrospect was a really cool reward, but in modern times with my personal fatigue of Green Hill Zone, it's honestly kind of funny. However, I do wish they gave you an additional playable character like Amy or Metal Sonic, but at least those characters are included in the multiplayer mode. And with that, let's now talk about some of the other gameplay modes within the game. If you're a diehard Sonic fan, you've already recognized I haven't even mentioned the Chaos. Chaos are creatures in this game that you can take care of and interact with in an area called the Chao Garden. It's one of the premier and most iconic minigames in all of the Sonic franchise. The Chao Garden is a separate world from the main story and stages that you can access with Chao Garden keys. These keys are accessible in most stages, so you can spend time with the Chaos with your favorite characters, even Tails and Eggman. I wouldn't really recommend Eggman though, since his legs look crazy. Each Chao has stats that can be increased. You can level them up with Chaos Drives and animals collected through the stages you play. This can increase their stamina, power, ability to run, amongst other things. You can enter them into tournaments like Chao Karate or racing events where they compete against computer-controlled Chaos. Additionally, there's a Chao Kindergarten, where they can learn fun things like how to sing or dance. You can visit the principal, the nurse, and there's also a shady locker where you can buy black market Chao goods. Sounds super sketchy, I know, but this is where you can buy accessories and stacks for your Chaos, as well as additional eggs, which is where Chaos come from. Now, I know I already talked about how difficult some of the stages in this game could be, but I want to note that some emblems need to be achieved from the Chao Garden, specifically by completing all the karate tournaments and races. Honestly, the karate tournaments weren't that hard, but Chao racing? This is the big time sink of the game. I'm not sure if you've heard stories from others about how they spent hours upon hours in the Chao Garden, but these people probably weren't just having fun. They were training their Chows to be the best of the best so they could beat all the other Chows in these competitions. To me, the amount of time needed to raise your Chow to be competent enough to compete is a bit ridiculous. Each Chow has a grade for their stats, which can be checked with the nurse in the Chow kindergarten. Most of the time, your Chow won't have great grades on their stats, so you're incentivized to breed the Chows to get better stats, kind of like Pokemon with their IVs. I got really lucky because my main Chow was born with an S grade for the running stat, which some players would say is the most important stat of all. Besides from grades with your stats, you still need to provide your Chow with animals and chaos drives to raise their experience points for their stats. This can be super time consuming, but luckily there is a glitch that allows you to use animals and chaos drives repeatedly, since normally each is only good for one use at a time. I know I'm ranting a bit about the Chao Garden, but to put in perspective, there are 4 karate tournaments you need to complete, with each tournament containing 5 fights. So that's 20 fights in total to get 4 emblems, which isn't that bad honestly. However, there are 5 emblems you need to get from the Chao racing, and I'm not making this up, there are a total of 67 races you need to complete, with each race getting more difficult depending on the course. This to me was overkill, but I can see why people have so much fun spending hours in the Chao Garden. I think if I wasn't in a time crunch to get out this review, I could have paced things a little bit better, but regardless, I got through it just like I did the regular stages. Besides from spending time with the Chows, another game mode you can play is kart racing. This game mode makes a brief appearance with Tails and Rouge in the main story, and I used to think it was pretty daunting. However, after watching some tutorials, I was able to master this game mode and complete all the missions and difficulty types to get the emblems I needed. I still think it's a lackluster kart racer, but not as difficult as I made it out to be. There's also a boss rush mode for the Hero and Dark campaign bosses, as well as a mode that combines all of them. You need to complete these to get a few emblems, but they're fairly easy to get through. Lastly, there's a 2-player game mode where you can battle against a friend in speed stages, mech shootouts, and even treasure hunting. You can use characters from the story, as well as fan favorites like Amy and Metal Sonic to duke it out. And that about covers all the different game modes and minigames within Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. In this next part of the video, I'm going to change the tone a bit. Are you a music person? Not like a musician per se, but someone that just really enjoys music. Do you remember the first time you found a band or artist that you really connected with? It's almost indescribable, right? I always think of Linkin Park as being the first band that really got me into music, but before them, there was another band that was truly the gateway to my interest in music. That band was Crush 40. Crush 40 is a duo made up of Johnny Gioeli and Jun Sonoy. They're mainly known for their work making music for the Sonic the Hedgehog series. To me, I think of them as some of the most talented musicians I've ever discovered, not just for their awesome vocals and guitar work, but also their ability to encapsulate what Sonic is about in their music. The main track for Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is Live and Learn, which to this day is still one of my favorite songs of all time. Parts of the song play throughout the menu screens, but where it's featured most notably is in the final boss battle. Being able to take down the final boss when the song is playing in the background is seriously the coolest thing. I was awestruck as a kid during this moment, but even now, I find tons of joy playing the ending of the game because of the music. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle includes lots of other great tracks as well. Jun Sonoy was the sound director of the game, and his guitar playing and style can be found in most songs. There are all kinds of music genres in this game, from electronic stuff like Shadow's main theme, to the epic hip-hop tracks that play in every Knuckles level. Sonic Team really knocked it out of the park with this soundtrack, and I'm happy that it's one of the main things that makes this game so memorable. Now, let's briefly talk about Sonic Movie 3. This movie came out a few years ago in 2024, but is worth talking about in this video since the plot of the movie closely resembles that of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Of course, there were a lot of changes to the story that were made, some of which I wasn't happy with, but I was already anticipating change since Hollywood usually makes a lot of changes for movie adaptations. Regardless, it was still awesome to see my favorite video game get adapted into a movie, and I would say is the best Sonic movie so far. And although it was brief, hearing Live and Learn in a theater while Super Sonic and Super Shadow work together was absolute cinema. I'm really looking forward to see what they do with Sonic Movie 4, and can't wait to see Amy and Metal Sonic in a full-length film. Playing through Sonic Adventure 2 Battle always gives me a sense of nostalgia. It reminds me of being a kid again. This era of Sonic games was truly something special, and to me, was instrumental for my love of video games. The original Sonic Adventure, Sonic Heroes, even Shadow's self-titled game I remember so vividly. The majority of these games were developed by Sonic Team USA, and now a defunct division of Sonic Team. These games all had their own twists on what a Sonic game could be, but their similar gameplay made them cohesive and easy to pick up on if you had played the previous installments. This window of Sonic games remains my favorite within the Sonic franchise, and it makes you think, will Sega ever release a game like this again? I think the closest we got was Sonic 06, but that's a whole can of worms I don't want to open up in this video. I think if Sonic Team were to ever make an adventure-style game again, they'd probably do a remake of Sonic Adventure 1 or 2 before they made a title named Sonic Adventure 3. And although I like the most recent entry in the series, Sonic Frontiers, it still didn't scratch that itch I have for a new adventure game. If anything, Shadow Generations is closer to what I want than what Frontiers was, but it's hard to compare the two when Shadow Generations wasn't a full game. I do think Sonic Team will continue using a similar formula to Frontiers in the next mainline entry, which I'm fine with. I just hope they iron it out and are able to add some new features to make it really feel like a premium game experience. I'll be the first to admit Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is by no means a perfect game. It will never be listed by game journalists as a top 10 game of all time. The story can be perceived as cringe and hard to follow. The game can sometimes be frustrating to control. And lastly, I feel like the 3D Sonic games have always been fighting an uphill battle of trying to prove themselves versus their 2D counterparts, especially to those who grew up with the original side-scrolling games. But ignoring all that noise, to me, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is a timeless classic that I look back on and think, man, I'm so fortunate to have played this game as a kid. The game has iconic styling, unique level design, great music, an ambitious story, and it introduced one of the franchise's most beloved characters, Shadow. It's one of the only 3D Sonic games that actually got so much right, and even if that's a controversial statement, I'm ultimately happy this game exists. Sega had the tough challenge of following up the original Sonic Adventure, and in my opinion, they surpassed it and made a game that left a long-lasting impact on so many of us. Well, it's time to start wrapping up this video. And for those of you that are unaware, this is actually a redux of a review video I did for this game about 5 years ago. It was one of the first review videos I ever did, but as the years have gone by, I've wanted to redo it, and it being the 25th anniversary of this game was a perfect excuse. I'm glad I was able to re-experience this game from the perspective of getting all the emblems and achievements, and I hope that additional info was insightful to you viewers. I'll keep my old review up on my channel just for the memories, but I like to think of this as my definitive Sonic Adventure 2 Battle video. And that's going to do it for this one. I hope you all enjoyed this comprehensive review of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. There's more stuff and details I could have covered in this video, but I tried to hone in on what I felt like was most important from my perspective. If you have anything to add to what was mentioned in this video, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. I do a variety of video game content here on my channel, which includes short form content, live streams, and occasionally review videos like this. Lastly, you can follow me on social media on Twitter and Instagram at Sigsing for updates and funny posts. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you tune in to the next one, and happy 25th anniversary to my favorite game of all time. Peace.